When I dialed my son to ask for the date of his wedding, it wasn't Noah who answered. It was his fiancée, Kelsey. She stared at me across my own living room, phone still warm in my hand, and delivered the line with a cool little smile. "Oh, we already tied the knot yesterday. We only invited special people." Those words landed like sleet against bare skin. Special people. For 3 years, I had covered their $500 monthly rent like clockwork, furnished their little bungalow piece by piece, and stocked their fridge whenever the shelves looked embarrassed. Apparently, that didn't qualify me for special. I stood there, a 66-year-old woman who knows the weight of grief and the price of groceries, holding the phone as if it weighed 1,000 pounds. My son avoided my eyes. Kelsey lounged on the very sofa I had purchased on clearance and hauled up their steps myself. In my closet at home hung the blush dress I'd chosen for their day, with low heels that wouldn't punish my knees. $200 worth of "I love my boy" and want to look nice in the photos. Photos, it turns out, I would never be in. For weeks I'd daydreamed about that ceremony. I'd stashed aside a crisp 1,000 to hand them as a wedding gift. I had phoned my sister, Dana, in Milwaukee to share the happy news. I scrubbed baseboards, rearranged vases, and baked lemon bars so I could host them after the reception. All of that collapsed into dust in a single sentence. Only special people. Noah finally lifted his head and recited his line like someone else had written it. "Mom, it was very intimate, just the two of us and witnesses." But the internet has a way of telling on liars. The pictures were already up. Kelsey beaming in the white gown I'd partially helped pay for with an $800 personal expenses boost last month. Her parents flanking the couple, her siblings with champagne and shiny teeth. The captions glowed. My absence howled. A week later to the day, Kelsey called again, but the tone had been sanded down to a whimper. "Evelyn," she said, because my name is Evelyn Harper. "The rent's overdue. The landlord says if we don't pay this week, we're out. You forgot the transfer." I didn't answer at first. I let the silence expand. I let memory unspool. The mornings I'd left my coffee to go wire money. The hobbies I'd shelved to juggle their urgent needs. Bowls of beans and rice when my own budget felt thin so their pantry wouldn't. Now the woman who barred me from her ceremony was back, fishing for the old reflex. "Kelsey," I said, my voice steady in a way that startled me. "I warned you. I only help special people." You could have set a glass on the quiet that followed. When she finally found words, they wobbled. "I don't understand. We've always been special to you. You're like a second mom." A performance. The same sweetness she'd used to pry funds for the dress, the rings, the honeymoon deposit. The syrup that always spread just before the ask. For years, I'd moved through my own home like a guest, measuring my voice, censoring my needs, hoping for scraps of tenderness from my only child. I had been the convenient mother, the agreeable mother-in-law, the silent provider who didn't protest when they treated me like wallpaper. But that phrase, special people, woke something in me that had been asleep far too long. That night, I sat on the edge of my bed and cried, in anger first, then clarity. Grief over the long con I'd played on myself. I cried for every time my love had been treated like a burden, my presence like an inconvenience, my money like the only part of me that mattered. I cried for the fool I'd been, the woman who had made herself a fuel pump and then wondered why people lined up with empty tanks. By morning, something inside had hardened into purpose. In the bathroom mirror, I saw the same soft face that life and weather had carved. But behind the crow's feet, a new steel glinted. I brewed coffee and, out of habit, almost reached for my phone to text Noah. I didn't. For the first time in years, I let my morning belong to me. At the kitchen table where I'd budgeted for other people's wants, I laid out my checkbook and bank statements and did the arithmetic like I used to balance vendor ledgers back when I ran reception at a logistics warehouse. Rent at $500 across 36 months, $18,000. Food and household bits, maybe $200 monthly, another $7,200. Holiday and birthday gifts, easily $3,000. Kelsey's sudden emergencies, $800. A temporary car loan, $2,500. A busted AC unit in their place I paid to fix, $600. The living room set they were currently wearing out, $1,200. $33,400. A precise pile of generosity that I had shoveled out of the inheritance my late husband Robert left to carry me into gentler seasons. Money I'd trimmed from my own retirement, from my protection against the world, from the safety I had believed I'd earned. The phone buzzed. Noah. I let it vibrate out. 10 minutes later, Kelsey. I didn't flinch. A text appeared. Mom, please answer. We need to talk. Delete. At 2 that afternoon, I slid into my sneakers and took a walk for no reason other than air. The park by the French Broad River still hosted the ghosts of little Noah racing toward the slides, all knees and noise. When exactly had that boy turned into a man who treated his mother like a debit card with a heartbeat? When had I decided affection was something you could purchase in installments? I passed the glass doors of Blue Ridge First Bank. Through the reflection, I saw branch manager Mike Benton wave. We'd known each other for years. He'd shepherded every automatic transfer to Noah and Kelsey. He'd watched my savings slowly hemorrhage in service to 2 adults who always seemed to have a crisis with a due date. Afternoon, Miss Harper, he said when I stepped into his office. What can I do for you? I need to cancel every automatic transfer to my son and his wife, I said, and I want to make sure no one but me can move a penny from any of my accounts. His brows rose. Those recurring transfers were as predictable as sunrise. Are you sure? Did something happen? Yes, I said. I woke up. While he tapped at his keyboard, my phone jittered again. Call, text. I powered it off. Mike glanced up, soft-eyed. Forgive me for saying, but I've watched you be very generous for a long time. If anyone is pressuring you, no one is pressuring me, I said, and surprised us both by smiling. I've simply stopped pressuring myself. When I left the bank, I felt 10 pounds lighter, as if the chair I'd been hauling on my back had finally been set down. For the first time in years, my money felt like mine. On the drive home, I made a little inventory of all the small joys I'd forfeited so someone else could have convenience. A weekend in Beaufort I'd canceled, dinners with friends I'd bailed on, watercolor classes I'd shelved. There would be time to pick those up again. There would be time for me. 3 cars were parked at the curb in front of my small craftsman house in Asheville. Noah's dented sedan, Kelsey's compact, and a black SUV I didn't recognize. Through the front window, I could see movement. Of course they had keys. I'd given them keys. I stood on the porch, inhaled the damp mountain air, and stepped into what belonged to me. Noah was hunched on my sofa, fingers pressed into his temples. Kelsey paced like she'd been caged. A man in a gray suit stood at my dining table, leafing through a stack of documents. My documents. What exactly is happening in my home? I asked louder than I felt. They all turned with the wide, innocent eyes of people caught stealing fudge before dinner. Kelsey recovered first. Evelyn, thank goodness, we need to talk. Mr. Bull Fisher is with the firm we consulted about your situation. My situation? The words came out cool. I'm just fine. What situation are you referring to? Noah finally looked at me. Panic had stripped the adult from his face and left the boy. Mom, the bank told us you canceled the transfers. Mr. Benton said you also locked us out of your accounts. We're worried. It's not like you. The lawyer stepped forward, hand out. I didn't take it. Ms. Harper, I'm Dr. Fisher, family law. Your children asked me to assess your ability to make sound financial choices. They're concerned. I walked past him, gathered the papers he'd spread open without permission, and stacked them tight in my arms. These are mine. You don't get to paw through my private life. Mom, Noah said, using the voice a gym manager uses to cancel memberships. You're acting strange. Cutting us off overnight, ignoring our calls. It's not normal. We think you might need help. Kelsey reached for my forearm, all velvet. Evelyn, sweetheart, this stress is a lot. Being alone at your age. Confusion happens. There it was, the word they were building toward. Confusion. I saw their whole play. Paint me feeble, declare me incompetent, seize the steering wheel of my life while calling it care. I am not confused, I said, and the corners of the room sharpened. I am clearer than I've been in a decade, and you're going to leave. Right. Now. Fisher's tone smoothed into professional reason. Ms. Harper, if concerned family members believe your decision-making is impaired, they have the right to intervene. They've documented troubling behaviors. A hard laugh rattled out of me. Troubling behaviors like deciding my money is not the community chest? Like declining to subsidize 2 able-bodied adults who excluded me from their wedding? Kelsey flared. We never treated you badly. You're part of our family. Everything you have will be ours someday anyway. We're just streamlining. The mask fell clean off. In their minds, I had already been processed. Whether I had 66 years left or 66 days, the only interesting part of me was what my accounts could do for them. Out, I said, pointing, because apparently I had to practice the word. All 3 of you. Noah stood, heat climbing his neck. We can't just leave. We have bills, the lease, the car payment, the credit card you co-signed. You can't just flip a switch. Watch me, I said and felt a spark. For years I paid for things that didn't even have my name on them. For years I filled a refrigerator in a place where I wasn't invited for dinner. For years I financed a life that made no room for me. The switch is flipped. The lawyer slid a folder across the table as if we were at a timeshare presentation. A temporary durable power of attorney, he said smoothly. It would allow Noah and Kelsey to manage your financial affairs while you focus on your health. I picked up the folder, walked to the trash can, and dropped it in. The only transition happening is you to the sidewalk. Kelsey's eyes filled, rage dressed as grief. You can't do this, Evelyn. We made plans based on your support. We bought things. We have commitments. Based on my money. I said, not my well-being, not my company, not my happiness. You planned your life on a stranger's paycheck and called it love. Noah took a step toward me and I lifted my hand. I could feel the exact moment something in him recalculated. This wasn't the pliable mother he'd trained. This was a woman who had taken her keys back. Mom, he said, voice pitching toward contrition. We messed up, okay? The wedding was a mess. Kelsey was stressed. I was overwhelmed. If you'd just be reasonable. Reasonable, I repeated, tasting it. In their dictionary, reasonable meant keep paying and stop asking how it feels. Fisher collected his papers with the briskness of a man who had lost the sale. Ms. Harper, this isn't over. If you are declining because of mental illness, a judge can appoint a guardian. Then do your homework, I said. Before you threaten a 66-year-old woman who has balanced a household, paid her taxes on time for 40 years, and financially buoyed 2 adults until last week. Kelsey's tears dried in an instant, and the predator stepped forward. We have lawyers, too, she said softly, and we're not afraid to use them. With your own money, I said, opening the door, because mine is closed for renovation. They filed out with the injured dignity of people unaccustomed to the word no. On the porch, Noah turned. You'll end up alone, Mom, and when you really need help, nobody will be there. I'm already alone, I said, and it shook us both how gentle it sounded. The difference is that now it's by choice. The door shut. For the first time in years, my living room hummed with the nicest sound I knew. Quiet that wasn't cold, quiet that wasn't punishment, quiet that belonged to me. I didn't sleep much that night, but it wasn't the old knot of dread that kept me awake. It was a bright, humming energy, like the house lights coming up after a long play. If they wanted to fight, I'd fight. calmly, with paperwork and witnesses. Not with begging, not ever again. By sunrise, I had showered, dressed, and booked the first consultation I could get with an elder law attorney in town, a woman named Ana Alvarez with a reputation that made unscrupulous relatives itchy. I'd met her years ago when Robert's will had been probated. She'd spoken to me like I was a person with a brain and a life, not a problem to be shepherded through signatures. Miss Alvarez listened without interrupting, taking notes as I laid out every transfer, every urgent ask, every boundary crossed. What they did yesterday, entering your house, rifling through private papers, bringing in a lawyer to pressure you for power of attorney, fits the pattern we call elder financial abuse, she said. It's depressingly common. We're going to build a wall around you. We spent 3 hours collecting evidence. When she totaled the money trail, $33,400 over 3 years, she exhaled. Ms. Harper, that's a lot of life you could have lived. I intend to live it now, I said. Good. First steps, change your locks today. Install cameras. Open a fresh account at a different bank. We'll update your will and add a clause that disinherits any heir who challenges your competence in court without evidence. And we'll send a letter demanding that future contact go through my office. When I left her office, the town felt newborn. The October air smelled like apples. At Sawyer's Hardware, where I'd spent too many Saturdays buying parts for Noah's broken faucet or Kelsey's squeaky cabinet, I marched straight to the lock aisle. Ms. Harper, said Paul Sawyer from behind the counter. Let me guess, more repairs for the kids' place? Not today, I said, smiling for real. For mine. His son Tyler stepped from the back with a clipboard. We do camera installs now too. Want a quote? I want the whole fortress, I said. Best locks, full perimeter, doorbell cam, whatever stops surprise visitors. While they assembled supplies, my phone lit with an unfamiliar number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Evelyn, please don't hang up. It's Kelsey. We should talk like adults. She didn't wait for agreement. I know you were hurt about the wedding. We want to make it up to you with a special dinner. Here, we could do it at your place. Cook together like before. Manipulation, now with candles. How much rent are you behind? I asked. She missed a beat. Well, it's 2 months, so 1,000 total. But Evelyn, that's not why. It's exactly why, I said. Here's my answer. You made a choice when you said I wasn't special enough to attend your wedding. I'm making mine now. Don't call again. I turned the phone off and slid it deep in my bag. Liberation has a click to it, like a seatbelt finally snapping into place. On a whim, I booked a long overdue appointment at Cynthia's salon. The last time I'd sat in that chair, Robert was alive. Miss Harper, I thought you moved, Cynthia said, wrapping me in a cape. I almost told her the truth. I had moved, mentally, morally, financially, out of a prison I'd decorated myself. Let's do it all, I said. Cut color, the works. She caught my eye in the mirror. Something good happen? Yes, I said. I remembered I'm a person. By late afternoon, I pulled into my driveway feeling more like myself than I had in years. A woman sat on my front steps, wrapped in a cardigan, balancing a travel mug on her knee. I recognized her vaguely from neighborhood meetings. Ms. Harper? She asked, standing. Yes? I'm Lorraine Porter. I live next door. We've waved but never talked. Yesterday I heard raised voices at your place and I just wanted to check on you. I felt that ridiculous sting behind my eyes again. A neighbor's simple concern felt more honest than the performances I'd endured for my family. Come in, I said. Let me pour you coffee and tell you a story you won't believe. At my little table, we swapped histories. Lorraine had a daughter who'd once kept her in an emotional vice with emergencies that were always one missed shift or one bad decision away. I thought if I didn't keep rescuing her, she'd drown, Lorraine said. Turns out I was the current. What happened? I asked. I stopped paying. She flailed, she blamed, she threatened. 6 months later, she called me, apologized, and found a second job. We're fine now. I don't pay her rent. I love her. Both things can be true. Her story settled in my chest like a warm stone. Maybe there was a world on the other side of this, where I wasn't bleeding all the time. Maybe there was a way to love that didn't resemble indentured servitude. Morning brought the Sawyers to upgrade my house into something my younger self would have mocked. Deadbolts that take grown men a minute to pick. Cameras that ping my phone if a raccoon twitches in the azaleas. You'll be able to see anyone at your door from anywhere, Tyler said, walking me through the app. And if someone tries to force entry, the system alerts the police. I nodded and didn't say what I was thinking. I never imagined I'd need security to keep my own child out. With the wiring tucked and the locks set, I called the person who remembers all versions of me. Dana, I said when my sister picked up. I've been paying for a story that isn't true. I told her everything. The secret ceremony, the scripted lawyer, the power of attorney papers in my trash can. She exhaled through her teeth. Evie, it was time. Every call we had, you sounded like Noah's bookkeeper. I kept waiting to hear about you. You won't believe what a cousin said he overheard from Noah at a barbecue. She added, hesitant. He never said, I miss Mom, or I love Mom. It was Mom covered this bill. Mom bought that couch, like you were a service. I felt something clean break in me, the way a doctor sets a bone that has healed wrong. Pain that means alignment. Thank you, I said. I need the truth. We hung up just as the doorbell chimed. On the screen, a woman in a neat blazer waited with a clipboard. When I opened the door, she lifted her badge. Good morning, Miss Evelyn Harper. I'm Jasmine Patel with Buncombe County Adult Protective Services. We received a report you may be in an at-risk situation and need to conduct a wellness check. The chill that raced through me had nothing to do with weather. They'd escalated. I asked to see the ID, invited her in, and called Anna Alvarez from my landline in speaker mode. Miss Patel, Anna said when she arrived 20 minutes later and verified the badge herself. We're happy to cooperate. But Ms. Harper's family has been attempting to force a power of attorney, has entered her home without consent, and has made repeated, unwanted contact. We've documented $33,400 funneled from her accounts over 3 years. She is physically healthy, cognitively sharp, and in possession of her finances. Ms. Patel paged through the file Anna slid over, bank printouts, my fresh security invoices, a letter from my primary care doctor noting clean labs, and a baseline memory assessment I'd agreed to that very morning, just to put a stake in the ground. The social worker's expression softened. Ms. Harper, can you tell me why you changed your financial arrangements so abruptly? Because I learned a hard fact, I said, that I can love my son and still refuse to bankroll his adulthood. That being 66 doesn't make me the community wallet, and that people who invite me into their lives only when I'm paying are not my people. Do you live alone? She asked. Yes. Do you feel safe? Safer than I did last week. Do you manage your own bills? Down to the penny. She closed her folder. I see no evidence of impairment or danger. I'll be closing this case. When she left, Anna looked at me and said, very softly, they're not done. I know. They may try to file for guardianship. It's expensive and shameful, but we'll be ready. I believed her. For the first time since Robert's funeral, I believed someone could defend me besides me. But even with that reassurance, I went to bed with a weight in my chest I couldn't shake. Grief for the son I thought I had. Grief for the mother I'd played on TV for years. Grief for the idea that love is something you can purchase with increasingly larger checks. Still, underneath it all, there was a new current in my blood. A low, steady hum of resolve. If they wanted a courtroom, then I would bring light into the dark. Paper, dates, names, receipts, witnesses. And the one thing they never imagined I would bring. Myself, unbowed. I woke before the sun and made oatmeal the way Robert liked it. Pinch of salt, splash of milk, berries if we had them. habit more than hunger. I ate half, rinsed the bowl, and walked my little house, checking each new deadbolt, each tiny eye of the cameras. I wasn't afraid. I was rehearsing a new kind of safety, one that didn't ask permission from anyone. Lorraine texted to ask if I needed company at lunch. I said yes, then corrected myself. I wanted company. Wanting was a muscle I was learning to use again. Before we met, I drove to the cemetery with a soft towel and a small pair of clippers. Robert Stone had gathered a fringe of crabgrass. I trimmed and wiped and talked the way widows do, out loud and earnest, as if grief were a radio tuned between stations, and sometimes his voice might crackle through. I think I lost our boy somewhere in the handoff between love and obligation, I told the granite. I kept paying and calling it care. I kept hoping one more check would be the one that turned the light on. It never did. Wind ran through the pines as if answering with an old refrain, enough, enough, enough. By the time I returned home, the camera feed had flagged 3 notifications, Noah's sedan creeping by once, the black SUV twice. They didn't ring the bell. They were studying the angles now, mapping when I came and went. I texted Anna screenshots and timestamps. She replied, good, keep logging. Paper beats performance. 2 days of quiet passed, then Quiet's mean cousin arrived. At 5:30 on a Thursday, as the sky lowered into violet, 2 cars swung to the curb and 4 silhouettes fanned across my lawn like they owned it. The bell chimed. I didn't open. A fist hit the wood hard enough to rattle the hinges. Mom! Noah shouted. Open the door! You can't hide from us. My thumbs moved before my heart could pound. 911. Then a second call to Anna. Stay inside, she said. I'm 10 minutes out. The restraining papers are filed. The judge hasn't signed yet. We'll use the video. The bell again. The fist. Kelsey's voice, pitched bright for the neighborhood. Evelyn, sweetie, you're scaring us. We just want to talk. You're not well. The sirens reached first as a rumor, then as fact. 2 cruisers angled at the curb, lights splashing red and blue across my azaleas. An officer knocked gently, announced himself, and I opened with the chain still latched. Ma'am, you all right? I showed him the screen. Earlier drive-bys, tonight's visits, Anna's message, the draft of the restraining order. He stepped back to the group. Noah spread his hands, the picture of a concerned son on TV. My mother is acting erratically. We're trying to check on her. The officer's jaw worked once, slow. Checking on your mom doesn't involve pounding on her door after she's asked you to leave, son. You're done here for tonight. They dispersed under complaint, Noah last. He looked up at the tiny camera lens and tried out a smile he must have practiced in mirrors. We love you, he called. This is for your own good. When the street was mine again, I stood in the foyer and let the adrenaline blow through like a storm. Then I brewed tea and set out 2 cups. By the time Anna arrived, I'd steadied. She reviewed the footage, texted a link to herself, and took one of the cups in both hands. Guardianship is coming, she said. They'll frame your independence as decline. We'll need a capacity evaluation by someone bulletproof, and we'll need to lock down your allies. I'm ready, I said, and knew I meant it. The next morning, I scheduled an appointment with Dr. Lila Moore, a neuropsychologist Anna trusted with her own parents. Dr. Moore looked like every teacher who ever terrified me into doing my best. Kind eyes, no nonsense. We spent 2 hours on memory drills, problem solving, math, timelines. She asked me to explain compound interest and to design a simple household budget on a blank notepad. She asked me to recall a list of words at intervals while we talked about Robert and the logistics warehouse and all the ways love gets misspelled as money. At the end, she folded her hands. Ms. Harper, I'll put this in formal language for the court, but here's the human version. You're sharp as a tack. Your insight is excellent. I suspect you've been outsourcing your boundaries, not your thinking. The report arrived 2 days later, pages of charts and scores and conclusions Anna called court candy. We added it to the growing binder on my dining table, which Anna had labeled in thick marker, Evelyn by entitlement. I laughed the first time I saw it, and laughed harder the more I carried it around. Sometimes a joke is armor. Lorraine started a quiet practice of checking on me with casseroles and stories instead of questions. She had friends, it turned out, women my age and older who had their own versions of my script. One afternoon, she ushered them into my living room with the gentle authority of a pastor. "This is Cynthia," she said, motioning to my hairstylist, who grinned at me like we'd shared a good secret. "And Maria, and Carmen, and Althea." We told the truth for 3 hours. Maria described a brother who kept forgetting his wallet. Carmen had a daughter who weaponized, "If you loved me," like a knife. Althea, 82, regal, held my gaze. "Love that needs receipts isn't love," she said. "It's accounting." We ate pie and practiced a new vocabulary. No, not anymore. That doesn't work for me. We practiced the difference between guilt and grief. We laughed until we nearly cried, and then we cried and called it a meeting. The papers landed the following Tuesday, served by a young man with a shaved head and a polite apology. Petition for adult guardianship, filed by Noah Harper and Kelsey Brennan. Allegations, sudden financial changes, social isolation, paranoia evidenced by installation of surveillance equipment, refusal to accept medical and legal assistance, cognitive decline. Attached, a statement from neighbor witness. Arthur Davis claiming I'd yelled at my family in the street. An affidavit from a pharmacist named Tom Green alleging erratic medication use. A note from a Dr. Lehman asserting I'd refused psychiatric evaluation. It was a novel of distortions and half-truths. "Mr. Davis is angry because my garden club parks near his mailbox," Lorraine said when she read the packet. "He has a buzzer he hits when anyone touches his curb. You can hear it across the street." "And Tom Green?" I asked. "Go ask him," Anna said. "I'll come." Tom Green nearly tripped over his own apology when he saw us at the counter. "Ms. Harper, I am mortified," he said, cheeks flushing. "Your daughter-in-law asked me what you take." I told her the truth, vitamins, occasional aspirin, and she nodded and handed me a paper to confirm there weren't records for prescriptions, which I thought was for insurance. I didn't read the legal boilerplate at the bottom. I would never say anything is erratic. Anna slid a blank form across the counter. "Then say what's true, in writing, and add that you were misled." He scribbled as if the pen were on fire. When he handed the letter back, he met my eyes. "I'm sorry," he said again. "I've got a mother." We tried Mr. Davis next. He opened his door just far enough to wedge his slipper in it and sneer. "You've got strangers coming and going at all hours," he said, as if my home were a nightclub. "You yell at your son in the street. You put cameras up like this is the Pentagon. It's chaos, and I like a quiet block. You've watched a woman who is being harassed take measures to protect herself," Anna said evenly. "And then you decided your convenience mattered more." He huffed. "I wrote what I saw." "What you wanted to see," Lorraine muttered under her breath, and I loved her for it. We didn't waste another minute there. Anna's binder swallowed Tom Green's corrected statement with a satisfying thump. "We'll knock this down, piece by piece," she said. "They're counting on the theater of worried children to carry them. We'll give the judge something better than theater. Facts." The hearing date came back fast. Buncombe County Family Court, 9 a.m. Judge Russell Miller, 3 weeks out. Time enough to make my house proof against any last-minute visits. Time enough to keep breathing. I found myself doing unremarkable things with liturgy. Walking the river trail, buying pears at the farmer's market, mending a tear in the sleeve of Robert's old cardigan. The ordinary world, it turned out, still wanted me. I let it. On a soft Sunday evening, after I'd watered the ferns and wiped the counters, the doorbell rang. The camera showed Noah alone, hands lifted in a pantomime of surrender. I stared at the screen, at the boy who had fallen asleep on my chest during thunderstorms, who had once taken my face in his toddler hands and said, with all the gravity of a prophet, "You're my best friend." I opened the door to the chain. "You're not supposed to be here." He nodded. He didn't try to force anything with the old familiarity. "I wanted to say sorry," he said, voice low. "About the wedding, about that day with Fisher. It got out of hand. You filed for guardianship." He looked at his shoes. "Kels she thinks you're being influenced, that people are trying to isolate you so they can take your money." "You mean Anna, the attorney who keeps my money with me? Or Lorraine, who brings lasagna and leaves with less of my time than she brought?" He winced. "I'm scared," he said. "Rent is real. The car payment. Life is. I don't know how to juggle as many balls as you did." "You don't fix that by stealing someone else's hands," I said. The old reflex surged, to reach, to rescue, to promise I'd cover one more month while he figured it out. I'd let the impulse rise like a wave and then break without moving. "I love you," I said, and he flinched like I'd hit him. "I do. That love doesn't come with a routing number anymore." He swallowed, nodded once, and left. I shut the door gently and stood with my forehead against the cool wood until my nerve endings stopped shouting. Then I wrote the date and time in the log for Anna. Paper beats performance. Prayer sometimes beats both. The morning of court, I woke before the alarm. I ironed my black suit with the concentration of a ritual, pinned Robert's small tie, tack, a silver compass, to my lapel, and looked at the woman in the mirror. 66, hair tidy, eyes clear. This face had been called many things in the last months. Confused, paranoid, manipulated. The only word that felt right as I buttoned the jacket was ready. Anna met me on the courthouse steps and handed me the binder like a knight handing over a shield. "Judge Miller is even-handed," she said. "He's denied guardianships for adult children who thought she won't pay my rent meant she's incapacitated. We'll speak simply. We'll let them overreach. Truth is patient." Inside, Noah wouldn't meet my eyes. Kelsey would not stop meeting them. Her dress was black, expensive, and designed to make her look like the chief mourner at a funeral I hadn't died in. Their attorney was older, polished, the very image of "trust me, Your Honor." He opened with a story told in the voice of concern. A once generous mother who had changed overnight, a woman influenced by outsiders into isolating from family, a vulnerable elder installing unnecessary security equipment and refusing help. Every phrase had been sanded to a shine. He was careful to say, "We love her," 5 different ways. He never once said money. Kelsey took the stand and toggled expertly between tears and poise. "Evelyn has always felt like a second mother," she said, and the words slid right off me. "It's been devastating to watch her decline." Anna rose for the cross and built her questions like a ladder. "When did you last call Miss Harper without asking for money?" she asked. Well, we talk about a lot of things," Kelsey said. "A date? I don't keep a log." "Did you tell Miss Harper when she asked about your wedding that only special people were invited?" "That was out of context." "What context redeems that sentence to the person who paid your rent?" Silence, the first honest thing Kelsey had given the room. Noah took the stand, and I braced for the hurt I knew was coming. He told the court I'd changed, that new people were in her ear, that I'd cut them off with no notice. He tried to sound injured instead of angry. It mostly worked. Anna's questions didn't. "How much money did your mother give you and your wife over the last 3 years?" "I don't know." "Does $3,400 sound familiar?" He swallowed. "She's always been generous." "How many times in those 3 years did you visit your mother without asking for money?" He stared at the water pitcher, as if the answer might be floating there. "Did you and your wife bring an attorney to Miss Harper's home to pressure her to sign a power of attorney?" We brought a lawyer to help. Did you enter her home without permission and go through her papers? We were worried. About her or about the rent? He looked at me then, quick and sharp, and I saw it, the tiny boy behind the man, terrified. It didn't excuse anything. I still wanted to fix it. I still didn't. Mr. Davis mumbled about strangers at all hours and yelling. Tom Green testified second and apologized first. I was misled, he said plainly, and held up his corrected statement. Miss Harper buys vitamins and aspirin. That's it. Dr. Lehman tried to make my refusal to see him mean something it didn't, but Dr. Moore came after him with the charts and the gentle authority of science. Ms. Harper demonstrates intact executive functioning, excellent insight, and no signs of cognitive impairment, she said, and let the scores speak. Lorraine testified last among my witnesses and did it like a poem. What you're seeing is a woman who stopped funding other people's choices, she said. If I'd had her courage at 66, I would have saved myself a decade. When it was my turn, I swore in with my hand steady. Anna didn't guide me like a ballerina. She let me stand like a bricklayer. We put the numbers in the record. We laid out the wedding exclusion, the bank transfers, the power of attorney folder in my trash, the pounding on my door, the social worker at my table who closed her case. Why did you stop paying? She asked, final question. Because I finally understood what I was buying. I said, not love, access, performances, the right to be used. Do you regret it? I regret that it took me so long. Noah's lawyer tried to undo me by being kindly patronizing. Ms. Harper, isn't it true you've become isolated? That you've allowed new people to come between you and your son? I have become selective. I said, that's a boundary, not a diagnosis. Judge Miller didn't make us wait long. He took a recess that felt like a year and a half and returned with a face like a locked drawer. He spoke slowly and cleanly, as if he'd learned somewhere that clarity is a kindness. Ms. Harper is in full possession of her faculties, he said. The evaluation is unequivocal. Her financial decisions are rational, whether or not they are comfortable for her family. The petition for guardianship is denied. I didn't cry. I exhaled, and the air came all the way from some pocket of me I hadn't accessed since Robert's last good day. Outside the courtroom, Kelsey stared at me like I had stolen her future. Noah looked at me and away and at me again, regret chasing calculation across his face like clouds. Althea hugged me so hard my glasses fogged. Anna squeezed my shoulder once and said, "Go live." I did. Within 3 months, I sold the Craftsman. I loved that little house, but it had been the stage for the worst show. I bought a sunny apartment near Pack Square with a balcony just big enough for a cafe table and a pot of basil that refuses to die. Half of what I'd saved, I donated to a coalition Anna recommended, people who pull elders out of the financial traps their families set, people who show up with legal pads and fierce kindness. The other half, I spent like a person with a future, a watercolor workshop in Santa Fe, a train ride through the Canadian Rockies, new walking shoes that didn't apologize for wanting comfort. I did not hear from Noah and Kelsey. Through the thinnest grapevine, I learned they moved to a smaller place and that Kelsey had taken a job at a boutique where she learned how to smile for people who weren't me. Maybe that's what adulthood looks like sometimes. Work you didn't want to have to find. On a mild night in June, I sat on my balcony with a glass of iced tea and watched the city move below. There are sounds you only notice when the loudest need in your life is no longer yelling. Silverware on a patio, a dog's collar, the rustle of leaves when a breeze remembers you. I thought about the woman I had been a year earlier, apologetic, forever reaching for my purse, mistaking compliance for kindness. I wished I could put my hand on her shoulder, tell her there's a life on the other side of no that tastes like the first ripe peach of summer. Sometimes I talk to Robert still. I tell him what the sky looked like over Taos, how the church bells sound at noon, the way paint behaves differently in dry heat. I tell him about Lorraine's grandsons, and how Cynthia finally convinced me to go lighter with my hair, and how Althea taught me to make her mother's pound cake, and we ate it warm, shameless, on a Tuesday. I keep the binder Anna made on a shelf in my hallway. I don't open it much now, but I like that it's there, labeled in heavy marker that makes me grin every time. Evelyn V. Entitlement. If there's another woman who needs to borrow it, I'll hand it over. If there's a courtroom in her future, I'll sit in the gallery in my black suit with Robert's compass at my lapel and nod when she glances back. If there's a kitchen table where she needs to practice the word no, I'll sit across from her and say it too, like a duet, until her voice finds its own tone. My name is Evelyn Harper. I'm 66 years old. I used to believe love required receipts. Now I believe something better, that real love leaves you freer, not poorer, that help without respect is just control with a smile, that quiet can be a force as sharp as any blade when you aim it at the right habits. If you made it to the end of my ramble, thank you for lending me your time. Tell me where you're listening from. I love seeing the map of strangers who feel like neighbors. If this story nudged you, tap the like, subscribe for more, and, if you've got a moment, leave a comment about the line you wish you'd drawn sooner. I'm still learning, still painting, still walking the river most mornings. And I'd like to hear about the life you're choosing now that you know you don't have to buy your way into anyone's heart.